the book of Revelation actually decodes the future. And here to talk about this very, very interesting subject, the Millers, Brent Miller Sr., Brent Miller Jr., great to have you back again.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
We've got a lot to talk about, and I'm going to begin by holding up two DVD sets. Actually, these are Blu-ray. One is entitled Decoding the Future, the other, The Coming Convergence. They are sort of a pair, maybe bookends. They do two different things, and we're going to be talking about that during today's program. But let's begin with talking about decoding the future and why it's such an important message that people need to hear right now.
Yeah. Well, as I stated before, there is a crisis that's occurring here, is that more people are shying away from studying biblical prophecy or understand why biblical prophecy has validity. And the non-believing world is falling even further away as well. So this divide is deepening between those that study prophecy, believe it, and follow it, and even the Christians, along with the non-believers in that camp that are just moving away from prophecy and don't believe there's any validity in it. The problem is that a quarter of the entire Bible is prophetic. It is a crucial thing to understand. So if you remove prophecy from the Bible, you've destroyed the Bible. You cannot remove it from the scriptures. And also, God left prophecy to prove the validity in the Bible. When you follow the 2,500 prophecies from the beginning to the end of the scriptures, what you see is a pattern that ends up looking like a series of dominoes. Actually, let me back up for a second. There's a misconception that prophecy is just like prediction. And you have people that take things like Y2K, the Mayan calendar,
right,
all these dates that are constantly coming and going. And
we have seen so many of those lately, and prediction and prophecy are two different things. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in the turn of the 19th century, they thought that was the end of the world. Right after that, with the appearance of Halley's Comet, they said that was the prophetic sign of the... So it never changes. But what happens is that it creates this pattern of crying wolf. So it's no wonder why so many people, including Christians, because churches no longer teach revelation and prophecy as a whole, so many of them are falling away from it, that not even Christians understand the difference between a prediction and genuine biblical prophecy. Now, a prediction, anybody can make a prediction. I can say something's going to happen 1 month or pull out a date and come up with a reason for it, but that is not Bible prophecy. You cannot pull a prophecy out of the Bible and have it stand on its own. The way that God created the prophetic structure is so divine, you cannot ignore the divinity of the Bible if you can understand it and study it. And this is what the secular world doesn't understand. Essentially, biblical prophecy is structured like dominoes. You cannot have an event in the future occur until the previous events also come to pass. If you remove a single domino, a single event from the prophetic timeline, the entire timeline falls apart.
Yeah.
What does that really mean? It means that with every prophetic event that comes to pass, because it was reliant on the events that came before, that the statistical probability of these events unfolding becomes so astronomical that unless it was ordained by God and all part of a plan and prophesied ahead of time, for that to actually happen would statistically be impossible to occur by chance. Absolutely impossible. And so when you actually study genuine biblical prophecy, you see that this is completely different than what we think is prediction. Now, The Coming Convergence, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of by now, it was recently the #1 documentary in all of America. It's been getting a lot of film awards, a lot of attention. Now, The Coming Convergence actually explains what the evidences are of why we know that we are in the last days, using the same kind of principle of biblical prophetic structure and looking at statistics to prove that it's happening.
In other words, it's kind of a sum total of prophecy giving a vision of the end times rather than being a factual breakdown.
Absolutely. And the reason why I think it's so important is because of what we just stated about how important biblical prophecy is in the scriptures. What many people glass over is that prophecy is the key to minister to non-believers. It is so powerful and effective for those to reconsider the validity of the Bible, because you can't remove prophecy from the Bible. You can't ignore it. You have to address it. The problem is that most of us don't know how to address it. We all know someone who's a family member or a friend who just doesn't believe the Bible.
Well, let me say something at this point because my reaction to what you're saying is people pull away from Bible prophecy because it's considered controversial. This denomination teaches this denomination teaches this denomination doesn't even want to talk about this, and so it goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And rather than get into a controversial area, people will just back away. And you've taken I think, a great perspective. You just seem to cut through all the controversy and just go ahead and talk about what it says.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas the coming convergence proves what is happening in these last days, and it's so effective that even secular audiences are taking notice.
Yeah.
The Decoding the Future series explains the why. So once you have, even for yourself, for your own edification, or for a non-believing friend or family member, the coming convergence is an amazing introductory ministry tool that is changing lives.
And it has a lot of emotional appeal. And at this point in time, you've got a little trailer.
I do, absolutely. We brought that with us.
Before the birth of our modern world, there existed an ancient warning, foretelling of a sequence of events that will reduce our world to ashes. For those who know the warning, the signs are clear. For others, they'll never see it coming. Join cultural anthropologist and theologian Jay McCarl on a journey to decode the most frightening and misunderstood prophecy in history. See through the eyes of the ancient world by uncovering the remnants of those who first received the writings, exposing new evidence that changes everything we thought we knew about the book of Revelation. This in-depth view sheds new light on a sequence of events that have already been set in motion, and the end is unfolding before our very eyes.
This talks about hail, fire, and this is not the last such judgment. This is only the first.
Is Revelation only a message of destruction, or does it hold the key to our survival?
The whole message of the book is misunderstood wholly.
In our final hours, will you choose to believe?
Everyone fears the end of the world.
How about that?
Yeah.
The production values of Decoding the Future are absolutely top-notch.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it really is appealing to not only Christians, but non-believing audiences alike. And we're using fire with fire by talking about the statistics and the evidences to prove that this convergence is actually happening. But this is really just the beginning, because ultimately, people want to move into the Decoding the Future series to understand the why. We've proved that it's happening beyond any doubt. But to really understand God's plan, well, you need to understand Revelation as a whole. It's the conclusion to the ultimate love story of us being with the Father. So it's not a book of fear, it's a book of hope. And so for those that want to go beyond just knowing that these events are unfolding in these last days, and well, what can I do about it? Why is this happening? Why must it happen? Understanding the book of Revelation is key to that. And as stated before, unlike looking at it through a certain lens of denomination or saying this means that, or this is our personal view or our take on Revelation, those types of things are, they're very interesting, but they're dividing the Christian community tremendously. So we're creating all these camps of how we want to view Revelation.
Well, Brent Sr., Brent and I were talking before we came on today, and we were talking about how the Bible is a drama. It has a beginning, it has a middle, it has a conclusion. When all the broken things are resolved, and the king comes and establishes the kingdom. So it's a whole story.
It is.
And you have to tell the whole story. And I think that's what Decoding the Future is about, as well as the coming Convergence kind of puts the emotional stamp and seal on it.
The book of Revelation gives us a lot of insight into God and his way of thinking and his plan for the human race from Genesis through the end of the scripture, Revelation. It is the capstone of why God created the plan of salvation. It is a love story. He takes us to heaven. But for the unrepentant world, this is the sequence of events which will happen to you. And that is why a lot of Christians will shy away from that. But as children of God, we are not meant for his wrath. But we are also given a blessing by God if we study the book of Revelation. He desires us to study it. There is a reason for us to study it. We see what's coming, and we can see the world unfolding right now. Let me give you an example. In the coming Convergence, we talk about the foundations that need to be laid, multiple foundations. I'll talk about just one. In Matthew and in Luke, Matthew 24 and Luke 21, we are told that in the end times there will be earthquakes in diverse places. Well, it's more frequent and more intense. In fact, the analogy of given as labor pains, the shortening of the time between quakes and the intensity. Well, if you look at the last 100 years of USGS data, and we have downloaded the last 100 years and analyzed it intensely for months, we see this pattern appearing where the earthquakes are in fact getting more intense and more frequent. USGS has gone on record denying that because they say that they have many thousands of more sensors around the world that are catching more micro tremors, but that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the earthquake magnitudes. If you separate those 6.3 and higher above the Richter scale, where any one earthquake could have been picked up by anywhere on the planet 100 years ago. Look at only those, so that argument disappears. You see, and our analysis shows, and we have a graph, and we've graphed it out, that shows that biblical accuracy is intact. The earthquakes are increasing with more frequency and more magnitude. So we've shown that foundation happening in the coming Convergence. Where does it come to fruition? In other words, where is the peak? Where is the point? It's in Revelation 6:14. And every mountain and every island is moved off of its foundation. You have an earthquake so massive, you have a crustal pole shift, and every island and mountain is literally snapped off the crustal mantle interface.
If you really think about that, that's almost beyond your ability to conceive. We've seen tsunamis and local disasters, but a global disaster is what's predicted.
That's unprecedented. It is far worse than what happened in the days of Noah. In fact, it is so unprecedented. Your next sequence, logical sequence, if you were a secular person looking at an event like that, you would expect to see massive volcanism around the world. Well, the second trumpet talks about volcanism, talks about a mountain on fire that's in the ocean. More likely than not, that is actually a supervolcano under the ocean coming up. And I say that because it is cast into the ocean, is already in contact with the ocean, whereas the first trumpet, the the fire came from heaven, from above. The third trumpet, the great star fell from heaven. So in the second trumpet, the mountain is cast into the ocean. It doesn't seem to have the same wording at all. So we're looking at massive volcanism, and that's in Revelation 8, verse 8. And then you have, of course, what does volcanism do? It sends soot into the air. So now you have the fourth seal, which is worldwide atmospheric conditions, where the sun
I got to
turns.
interrupt just and
Yes.
say one thing here. Just hold that thought, because right now there's a movie being, as we're doing this conversation, there's a movie being heavily promoted about an asteroid striking the planet Earth. You know, an asteroid being something the size of a maybe Mount Everest, coming through the atmosphere and crashing into the sea or something. And Revelation seems to talk about an event like that. So why are secular people imagining things like that unless something is telling them that we're very close to those kinds of catastrophes?
Well, I do believe that mankind was made in God's image. And one of the things that God instilled in every human being in all cultures is his moral code. So every culture on earth knows it's wrong to kill. They know it's wrong to lie, cheat, steal. Even if they've never heard of Christ, the Bible, Christianity, they just know this intuitively. But we also know other things intuitively. We feel society heading toward an apex, and that makes people nervous. Creative individuals, like in Hollywood, they look at how people are feeling, and they produce movies that are of concern to people. So you start to see different events that are kind of like reflections of what Revelation is talking about, but it's done in a Hollywood fashion. It is really not connected in reality to what the scriptures say.
God is nowhere to be found in those
Correct.
Hollywood productions. Whereas in Decoding the Future, God is at the center. And I want to talk with you, Brent Jr., about something that hits me all the time as someone deeply involved in Bible prophecy for a long time. If there's one thing I hear from people all over the world, by correspondence, by phone call, however, they say, at my church, they don't teach Bible prophecy. And you're addressing that problem, I think, primarily.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why not only the coming Convergence film was produced, but why the Decoding the Future series is an absolute necessity for it, not only to study individually, but to share with churches and small Bible groups, is because there is a deepening division between churches that are teaching prophecy and those that are shying away from it. And some of the reasons why they are shying away from prophecy is because of misunderstanding, assumption, and sensation, and the sensationalization of prophecy itself, mixing prophecy with prediction, genuine Bible prophecy. No, people don't understand prophecy anymore. It is a domino structure, and it is a thread that's woven to the beginning of the end of the Bible. And as I mentioned before, it is such a powerful ministry tool. It proves that God is divine. It proves when you see these things happen, you know that it is He. And that can be proven to a non-believing person who thinks that this is all a whole bunch of fantasy. You know, they laugh at it. And, you know, I like to say that, that honestly, I can't blame somebody for not knowing the truth. If I was in the non-believing world today, I could easily see why they would laugh at things like biblical validity, laugh at things like prophecy, because it seems outrageous. You're talking about events that are just almost beyond imagination. But if you can actually step back and use apologetics, which means real statistics, real reasoning, which the church doesn't do. The church no longer teaches apologetics. They're not doing the archaeological research, and they're not proving to the congregations these things are real. So they're kind of being left behind and conceding victory to the secular world, which has all the scientific answers. Well, the evidence is there. It's just, what lens do you want to look at it through? And the church is ignoring the need to teach the congregations. So this series really steps back and says, look, this is everything that we do know about Revelation. Why do we know this? Why is it not opinion? It's because we are actually uncovering ancient records from the first century, books about their culture, books about what the technologies they had, like pipes with hot, running, cold, and water. This all existed. We've been there. We filmed it. There's the evidence right in front of you throughout the series. And we are speaking a language, not only to Christians, but to non-believers that relates to them, saying this is real evidence.
Decoding the Future. I want to say one thing right away, and that is, this is right up here on the corner of this container. It says full 7-disc course, 7 discs, and the word course associated with it. In other words, this is a systematic presentation.
Absolutely.
And for people who are interested in, I think, objectively finding out what the book of Revelation is all about, this is a good way to go. You're not catering to any denominational belief.
No.
And in fact, you've deliberately steered away from that.
Absolutely. This has been in production for 4 years, and we have collected a panel of various theologians that actually have various different views, so that when we do come across something in Revelation, because remember, we're 2,000 years removed from the first century, from the time that John wrote the 7 letters to the 7 churches of Revelation. Right. That we are so removed that we try and look at a lot of things through an American lens. And we can understand a lot that way, but we lose a lot as well. And that's actually one of the reasons why we have so much conflict and division that doesn't need to be there. Now, we don't understand everything, granted. And that is why we have a collection of theologians that, I wouldn't say debate, but present their view on some of the more popular views of Revelation and why they believe what they believe. So we're not here to tell you this means that. We're here to tell you everything we do know about Revelation. And what's very interesting about this series is that we have had a lot of people actually think that it's almost a cliche to say this series on Revelation is different, because there's 1,000 of them out there. You're like, really, it's different? It's Revelation.
Yeah.
But this is different. There is nothing like this on the market. And so surprisingly, we even have scholars and Bible students and prophecy students that actually watch this series, and they are blown away because of the perspective that we tackle this at. It has never been done before.
Yeah, it cuts across denominationalism or the minor separations that people have when they read this scripture or that scripture, and it just goes for the large-scale meaning of the book, and I love that approach.
Yeah, you actually correctly indicated earlier that most churches avoid the study of Revelation.
Yeah.
They avoid prophecy.
Right.
The Decoding the Future series is so instrumental in opening doors for the pastors and churches to teach their congregations for the first time in a compact educational system. We are getting requests almost every single day from every denomination that's out there, Christian denomination, to actually teach this in their church, to show them the lessons. It's broken up into 37 visual lessons, and we encourage that. So pastors and churches all over the country right now are using this in all denominations
So
to
what's the
teach
common
their...
feedback on what are people telling you?
The common feedback is that they are learning more now about prophecy and about what is to come than they have literally studied for years.
And these are from the pastors.
Yeah, we have pastors who are feeding back to us, I didn't know that this is what it meant.
Decoding the Future, 7, in this case, Blu-ray discs, but we also have the DVDs, 7 discs, and you can have it either way when you order. Inside of the package, you're going to find this booklet. It's called the Prophecy Timeline Booklet, kind of lays out the overview, and we are offering Decoding the Future at half the price, either in Blu-ray or DVD. that we ever have before. And that's not all. We're making it part of a package. We love to do that here at Prophecy Watchers. We put together packages. The Decoding the Future package includes the 7-disc set, Decoding the Future, and the free, either Blu-ray or DVD, coming Convergence. 50% of what you would ordinarily pay. And there is so much to learn here, and you're going to enjoy learning it. Production value, well, you saw the trailer a minute ago. You know how it's made. You guys, when you put something together, you do not cut corners, right?
Absolutely. We want it to speak to the non-believing world, and so you have to compete at a level of a lot of higher budget productions. And we are blessed to be self-funded, so we're not funded by any denomination, so our information isn't skewed or controlled towards one direction.
And I love the fact that not only is this educational, it's kind of a travelogue. You can go to the region of the 7 churches. You go to the Holy Land. You can hear archaeologists comment on what they've found. And not only that, but it'll be like you're there. You can almost smell the dust. And it's a wonderful presentation. Decoding the Future, Blu-ray, DVD, and with your choice as a bonus of either the Blu-ray or DVD, coming Convergence, now 50% of what it's been offered for in the past. How do we conclude this conversation today? What I want to do is assure people that what we're telling them about is actual and teachable. And if you got doubts, there is a way you can learn the things that you should learn about the Bible.
Mm-hmm. And we also hear, how does it affect me? How does Revelation affect me?
Exactly.
Well, not only were we
That's a
commanded
good question.
to watch for the signs and to be ready, but remember what's happening now, what's converging in our day, this very day, there's no separation between what's happening now and the events in Revelation. It's a direct flow. It leads directly into the beginning of the tribulation and to the conclusions of events that happen in Revelation. So if you don't understand the signs that Christ tells us to look for and where they're leading, then how can you be ready or prepared or to avoid deception?
We're entering Israel's 50th anniversary, the state of Israel, almost 50 full years ago, or 70. Oh, no, I'm wrong about that. 70 years ago. Pardon me. But the 70th anniversary, 70, according to Moses, are the years of a man. That is the years of maturity. And here we are at Israel's 70th birthday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this year also marks the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. And so there is so many things converging in these last days that it has never been more important to not only understand Revelation, but the convergences that are happening now. That's why we are very excited that you're combining not only the coming convergence, but including it with Decoding the Future, because they really go hand in hand.
Brent Miller Sr., Brent Miller Jr., the Coming Convergence, and the Decoding the Future DVD Blu-ray series. You'll love it. I'm Gary Stearman. Thanks for coming by. It's been very enjoyable for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you keep watching. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.